There are cinematic success stories, there are landmark movies, and then there's 2016's Your Name, Makato Shinkai's genre-bending anime sensation that received mass critical acclaim and went on to become the highest-grossing anime film of all time, and the 4th highest-grossing film ever in Japan. Indeed, it is a film I, as ignorant as I am on the genre, hold in the highest of regards. And so, the question on everyone's lips was how could Shinkai possibly follow up such a film? The answer? By making a remarkably similar movie. That's not to say that Weathering With You is anything other than a great film. It is, and it functions as a really solid companion piece to Shinkai's major work. But beat for beat, you aren't going to get any surprises here. It's the same fantastical spiritual teen romance dramedy, but nevertheless, I still found it a winning formula. The film follows Haruka, a country boy who runs away to Tokyo and forms a friendship with Hina, a teenage girl who we know has some kind of magical element to her. If there's one thing Shinkai nails both in this movie and in Your Name, it's teenage romance. The awkward, possibly dating, I don't quite know what to say that underpins conversations in these characters' whole relationship. It's funny and cute and likable and consistently brought a smile to my face. The structure of the story may be painfully similar to Shinkai's previous film, even down to the prologue and epilogue, but it's not as though there's nothing to differentiate the film story-wise. There's a lot of focus on the grimier side of Tokyo, of crime in the city's sex industry, and what it's like to be broke in a city where everything costs so much. That's not to say that any of this is the focus of the film. Now, we've got a magical romantic caper to go on, but the feeling of Tokyo itself is very different from the bright, sprawling metropolis of Your Name. Indeed, the dark and rainy streets recall to mind David Fincher's Seven, as the film's evocative backdrop becomes as much of a character as anyone else in the film. The animation is just flat out gorgeous as well. It's so crisp and clean and expressive. From the film's first moments, the environment and weather is stunning. The characters feel so real and distinct, and when the film starts to incorporate more fantastical and surreal images, they're striking and magical. Here, we see Shinkai at his best, as the film's directing is a brilliant work of fluidity and animation, blending CG and hand-drawn elements in a way that, while it may sometimes be apparent when they've switched over to a computer, never feels jarring or out of place. Similarly, the Japanese voice cast, as opposed to the English dubs cast which I've not seen, are likable, and always manage to strike the right tone during a film that bounces between a lot of moods and genres very successfully. The major criticism of this work, however, and this is going to surprise no one considering how often I've brought it up already, is that it's just way too similar to Your Name. During the film's first act, I thought I wasn't going to harp on about this being the case, but it follows the same structure and emotional beats, and in very many ways even the same basic plot. And as good as it is, and it is very good, it's just not Your Name. While I watched it, I was genuinely thinking, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Phenomena. As in Dario Argenta's Phenomena, because that's in broad strokes basically a retread of Suspiria in the same way that this is a retread of Your Name. And you know what? If I have to tell people that they shouldn't watch this movie before watching Your Name because it's too similar an experience to Your Name but not as good, then I feel like it's a genuine criticism. I have a hatred of how many times I've brought up Shinkai's previous film in this review, and I usually wouldn't review a film like this, but in the case of Weathering With You, it's unfortunate that it's somewhat demanded here. One way in which Weathering With You succeeds independently of Your Name, however, is in its overall political messaging. While Your Name was hinting at very similar environmentalism, Weathering With You dives straight on in. During the Q&A after the screening, which was wonderful and Shinkai is nothing if not an engaging speaker to listen to, I was surprised to hear someone with an interpretation of the film's stance on global warming that was very different to mine. Indeed, Shinkai himself discussed the way the film looks at increasingly hostile weather in Japan, framing it both in the immediate need to do something to tackle the climate crisis and do it now, and in a more spiritual light, personifying the weather itself and having certain characters view the frequent downpour as returning Tokyo to its prior state. The spirituality of the weather is nothing if not an interesting idea, but the film is very much the story of the immediate response and sacrifices that young people are fighting for in order to stabilize the planet. The film at times may muddy this message up a bit, but watching the film in its entirety, and especially after listening to Shinkai talk, I personally believe that the film is nothing except sensitive to the needs of the planet right now. Overall, however, this film is absolutely gorgeous to look at and is as engaging as one would hope. It's funny and sweet, and its genre-bending story is a blast. It's just such a safe regression to familiar ground, however, and I would encourage every one of you to go out and see Your Name. Seriously, it's incredible. Then once you've seen Your Name, go out and see this film. It's really great despite it being overly similar. It's really enjoyable, funny and sweet in all the right ways, and I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10.